I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day, which is better, the new Star Trek or the new Star Wars? And the reason I'm asking that question is because I've gone to the viewer mailbag again and Jeff sent me this message. Hey there Brendan, I'm a big fan plus a patron. Thanks Jeff, I really appreciate that support, and also to all the rest of my patrons. You guys are awesome. Best channel on YouTube by far. I don't know if that's fair mate, because I think there's other channels that are better than I am, but I really do appreciate the encouraging support. It's great to have someone who's that enthusiastic in my corner. So I'll take that, even if it's not quite accurate. I think there are others who are better, but I'll take that kind of support. So thanks for that, mate. And he actually asked two questions. So Jeff, because you're such a nice guy and because you butted me up first, I'm going to answer both of your questions, and also because the first one is pretty quick. The first question is basically, what do I think of the brand new sci-fi TV series The Expanse? Do I think it qualifies as intelligent, well-written, well-acted sci-fi? Is it the best on TV right now? If not, then what's better? And I think it is. I actually think The Expanse is pretty darn awesome. One of the things I really like about The Expanse is the fact that it has a real well-crafted world. There's some really good world building in The Expanse. And to me, that's one of the hallmarks of good sci-fi. Some might be tempted to say that perhaps they think Westworld is better sci-fi on TV at the moment, but I disagree. I think that what The Expanse has got that makes it better than Westworld is the fact that it's got a universe and a world that's been crafted with a greater breadth and a greater depth. There's a lot more to that world than what there is in Westworld. And I also wonder about Westworld, if you didn't have Sir Anthony Hopkins in that lead role, whether or not it would actually be as impressive a TV show. I mean, it's still well written and well crafted and everything else, but I'm not convinced it's necessarily as good if you take Anthony Hopkins out of the show. And like I said, the big thing for me though is that The Expanse has that breadth and that depth of world building, and I think for me that's what I really love about good sci-fi of that kind. And you're right, I think Battlestar Galactica has still been one of the gold standards for television sci-fi for quite some time now, since 2004 when they rebooted it. And I think The Expanse, for me, the reason I probably like it is because I see a lot of similarities there. Right, that's the first question. Let's get on to the main question of the day. The rebooted Star Wars or the rebooted Star Trek, which one is better? And he goes on to say, the latest Star Trek series is also allegedly like Disney Star Wars. It's full of political messaging. It's apparently turned off a lot of the fans. Do you see both studios backing off on heavy-handed political messaging, or do you think that they will double down and stay the course, losing a lot of their core support along the way? So first of all, let's start by contrasting the new Star Trek with the new Star Wars. And if you put them both side by side and you ask the question, which has done a better job, I think it's pretty easy to see that the new Star Trek wins that race hands down. And I say that as someone who's not a huge Star Trek fan and who is a much bigger Star Wars fan. The reason I think that the new Star Trek movies have done a better job, the TV series has got some hiccups, that's for sure, but the new Star Trek movies I think have done a better job is because they have been more faithful to the original source material. While modernising, they haven't deviated greatly from the original source material. They have also been faithful to their fan base. They've understood their fan base, I think, a lot more, and what the sort of the basic things that you didn't mess around with, and they've kept those things intact. And they were also very clever. By creating a divergent timeline, what they've done is they've unshackled themselves from a lot of the problems that you're going to have with an existing franchise and an existing fan base. It was a very clever thing to do because it gave them a lot of creative freedom. The other thing too is the advantage that Star Trek has always had is the fact that Star Trek has always had a very strong political component. So it is hardly surprising to discover political messages in Star Trek when the whole point of Star Trek really was to promote a very idealistic, utopian, and very political vision for what the future of humanity could be like. They are very different universes in that regard, and so it's not a big surprise. There were some hiccups that the new TV series has got some political question marks hanging around it, but by and large they have been a lot more faithful to the source material. Now, Star Wars, obviously, different story. Now, The Force Awakens, you can see there was a care taken and there was a sense of faithfulness, despite its problems, to the original source material. Rogue One, huge faithfulness to the original source material. Then along comes The Last Jedi, and The Last Jedi it just feels like someone who did not care at all about the original mythology, about the original characters, and some truly bizarre decisions were made in the creating of that film. And that's why Solo failed, because I think the simple fact is that despite these excuses and these claims and these coordinated efforts to try and make it sound like it's just nothing more than a vocal minority of Hitler-esque type alt-right fans, the simple fact is that a lot of people didn't turn out for this film, for Solo. And the reason being is because a lot of people were turned off by what happened in The Force Awakens. Now you contrast that with, say, Star Trek, the Star Trek films, where the first film was a pretty enjoyable little outing. The second film is a inferior knockoff of The Wrath of Khan. That was a mistake. But despite the fact that it's derivative and it is a knockoff, it's still not a particularly bad film. It's just not the best they could have done. And then, of course, the latest film is more like an extended episode of Star Trek, but that's the sort of thing the fans love. It is still very faithful to what Star Trek is, plus bringing in a few modern elements. They haven't diverged wildly from the original source material to the point where they are just angering fans left, right and centre. Now the new TV series, a little bit different. There are some issues there, and I'm not convinced that this new TV series is actually that good. I just don't think, quality-wise, the way they've chosen or the sort of creative decisions they're making, I just don't think, to me it doesn't really feel like Star Trek. It feels like something else that is masquerading as Star Trek. But the thing is that it's a TV series, so in the long run, who knows? It'll possibly just be a blip on the radar. However, what happens next? Will the studios double down? Well, I don't know the answer to that question, unless they've got someone there who's savvy enough to say, hey, we can't keep losing money hand over fist. And that's often the biggest and most important deciding factor in these situations. How much money is it going to cost us? If there's someone there willing to actually do the maths and say, we need to course correct pretty quickly because we ain't driving this business into the ground, then what's going to happen is they probably will keep doubling down. They will try and ride it out. They will keep making these absurd accusations that anybody who doesn't like poorly written movies is somehow a racist or a sexist. And it seems to me that what's happened in the last week is that they do seem intent on doubling down at the moment. Now, that can only last so long because sooner or later the bottom line is going to come into play. You can only do that as long as there's money in the kitty or hope of a future payday. But the moment you get further down the track and you realize the money ain't rolling in because people don't want to see what we're producing because it's either the content is rubbish or a combination of the content being rubbish and the way we're treating the fans, then someone is going to have to at that point say, okay, we've really got to turn this ship around. Because at that point, there is no future because there's no money to underpin what you're doing. So at the moment it seems they are trying to double down, they're trying to ride this thing out. I actually wonder whether they're trying to create a sort of almost like a populist strategy where if we can convince enough people to join us on our side, like we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, then maybe we'll win this. It seems that perhaps that's what they're trying to do at the moment. But I think ultimately when episode 9 comes out, I don't think episode 9 is going to do particularly well because of what happened with The Last Jedi. I mean, if people are not willing to go and see a standalone film like Solo that has nothing to do with that trilogy, then why the heck do you expect people to suddenly turn out for the next film in the trilogy, which is directly connected to the problematic source of all the issues that have arisen here? So I can't see them doing well, and I think at that point, that's when they're going to be forced to actually confront the problem in a major way. The question is then, will they drive it into the ground, into some sort of oblivion or just sell it off really quickly? Or will they actually course correct and have the courage to appoint the people and to have a real hard and honest examination of their own internal culture and say, well, yeah, we're not getting this right and we need to fix this ASAP? Because I tell you what right now, they're not going to survive if they keep tracking the course that they have been tracking. There really is no positive outcome. This is not the Kessel Run. They're not going to be able to take a shortcut. They've got a rather large star destroyer in their path right now. It's called the market. And the market forces, they're a cruel mistress and they will dictate. If you're not going to appeal to the market and at the same time you are going to take a big dump all over the market, you're just not going to get anywhere. So sooner or later, they're going to have to figure that out. I'd love to hear your thoughts though, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description below and a link on screen at the end of this video. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.